Hi folks, in today's video we're going to be taking all of the doors from upstairs in the house that were looking like this yesterday and getting them to this point here. Right, we're finally, after 8 years, we're going to get around to doing these doors. So we've got 5 on this top floor, or the first floor of the house. These all look like really naff, kind of mid-century doors, but they're actually the original doors. They've just been panelled over, and I'll touch on that later in the video because there's some interesting, quirky facts on how this all happened. They're all on self-rising, self-closing hinges, so we can just lift these ones off, fortunately. There's something on the back here, isn't there? Yeah, it's quite heavy.
My dressing gowns.
So we're going to try and get all of them down. We've got 5, haven't we? 4 or 5. So let's do them all in one hit. Let me show you a couple of sneak peeks of what these are really like. Oh, it's Eden's.
Yeah.
This one I'll lift off. But when we first moved in, out of curiosity, we pulled off one of the panels.
So it's been 8 years looking like...
Don't. It's terrible, this one. I don't know what was kept in this room. Let me out. So this is what we're dealing with. They are really nice, original, solid doors. Unfortunately, we're going to end up with loads of filling. We're going to be painting them anyway, so it's not too bad. But all of these pinholes are going to have to be filled. But it's a challenge, and we like a challenge. As you can see, I'm in a big white box. I'm halfway through decorating and sorting out Joe's studio space, but for now, it's a pretty good space to work in. Right, as all my sawhorses are in use, we'll use the temporary workbench. Now we'll start on this one. I literally have no idea what we're going to find under here. Some of them have been painted, some of them have been stained, but it could be any colour. Right, are we ready? Let's have a look. Is it a colour? Ooh, blue. Now I'm sure there'll be some other discoveries on some of these doors, and I'll explain them when we come to them, but the original owner, or before us, was an antiques dealer, and he had a lot of storage of like antiques in a lot of the bedrooms because he lived on his own in a 6-bedroom house. So what he did is he had locks, he had alarm cables, pressure sensors under carpets. It was all pretty old school, but hence why there are kind of 5-lever and 3-lever sort of sash locks and things like that, on mortise locks, on all these doors, rather unconventional for a bedroom. It kind of makes sense to leave them in and just have an ornate, well, I mean, we do even have the keys for all these rooms, but I think because we're going to be painting, I can take these out, then we can install a little block of timber in there, fill the holes, and just have it nice and smooth. It's a bit more work, but it's going to be worth it in the end. So I guess the next question is, what are we dealing with on the other side of the door? Place your bets now. What's behind the door? It's a bit of faux wood grain. Doesn't look too bad, does it? So you can see these are just pine doors, and I think this is faked, you know, where they've printed on a bit more ornate wood grain. Bit of varnish, fairly smooth, still going to need sanding. I think actually, if anything, we're going to have more problem with the stepping between 3 layers of gloss and the rest of the door. This is quite even across the whole thing, so we may end up having to sand this strip back or strip it. Alright, time for the next big reveal. This was the bathroom one, but it didn't start life as the bathroom because we switched them. A lot of these doors were swung opposite directions. The traditional way of swinging a door is so it opens kind of into the room to give you a bit more privacy in the room, whereas modern day we tend to open them against a wall, and for that reason we put light switches on the opposite side from where they used to be and just swapped over some of the doors so we didn't have to change all the hinges. So I can't remember quite where this one was, but it was one of the bigger bedrooms. Right, I've had enough of sanding. It's okay, and the other side's fine, but it's just a pretty long-winded way of doing it. Plus, like I was saying, old paint is no good being airborne. We've got a good extractor and a good respirator, but even so, I think this white strip, which is the problem bit, this build-up of maybe 3 layers of gloss, we might be able to just take off nice and evenly with a heat gun. So I've already lent my heat gun out to one, so I've picked up another one. This one regulates down a little bit more from the look of it, so we might be able to be a bit more delicate. Picked up a couple of these scrapers from a car boot sale last year. They're going to be quite good for getting in nooks and crannies, so let's give them a go. Well, that's working better. It's coming off. Unfortunately, the primer underneath, whatever undercoat that is what governs it up. So we're going to have to take that off as well, and then any residue left will sand. You start disturbing too much of the finish in here. You can see already there's a bit of bubbling. We can sand that, but there's no need to strip this centre panel or any of these trim mouldings because the paint will go over just fine. So at this point, it's probably worth explaining how on earth our doors got to being covered in gloss paint and hardboard. Here's a little clip from the 50s, 60s. Some of you may already know of this chap. Barry Bucknell was a DIY pioneer on TV back in the day, and one of his passions back then was for, well, hardboarding all period features and glossing them white, or in our case, off-white yellow. Here's a little clip, and then we'll get back into it.
Hello. Well, this week, 1 or 2 jobs that you might have to do on doors. I don't know whether you've got a problem like this, a rather ugly old panel door. It's one that can be solved quite simply. You can make it look like this. fitting a sheet of hardboard.
Now, unfortunately for us, it appears that one of the previous owners of our house was somewhat a fan of Barry Bucknell and managed to follow just about every tutorial he must have done, because most period features were either covered up or ripped out. We've done our best over the years to put some of those things right, but anyway, I guess that's the beauty of the ups and downs of interior design. Now, the majority of the doors, the inside of the panels was nice and smooth and it just needed sanding and prepping for paint. Of course, if you were going to strip them right back and oil or wax the doors, then you would need to take them back. These two panels just happened to be very bad. They'd either been scraped or scratched, and we needed to take those back. So here is kind of what you would go through if you needed to do the whole door. One thing to mention is that a lot of people just send doors off to get dipped, then they get kind of pressure washed to clean it off. There are always risks by doing that because the joinery can really suffer. You can end up with things expanding or shrinking or splitting. So if you've got the time and the patience, then I think this is probably a better way to go. And it doesn't, once you're in the zone, it's not too bad and you can soon rattle through a few doors. That's number 4 done. I'm taking them to 80 grit at this point, and then we'll switch to proper finishing sanding in a bit. I've got one more door on the top floor to bring down. That means we've got 5. There are actually 2 more here in the next room, but we need some privacy in the house, and that's the only bathroom with the door. So I think I'm going to sand the last one of this one, stack them, bring the other one down, and then hopefully get somewhere near ready for a primer coat today. I'm going to prime them before I start filling. But as soon as I prime it, I'll be able to tell how bad it is, any imperfections, and I can spot them far easier. If I try and fill now, I'm bound to miss some and have to do another stage of filling anyway. Five of our doors sanded, or stripped, then sanded to a point which I'm ready to go on with our first coat. Like I was saying earlier, all the holes are on here. If you wanted to do these as fully stripped pine doors and wax them or oil them, these don't really lend themselves to that. And I know you probably could colour match your filler for all these holes, but there's been so many bits of butchering that's gone on down here where they've put in what would have been the original rim kind of rim lock there, and then since then they've put in a mortise lock. There's been a push plate at some point and other locks, so really these are just not lending themselves to being stripped. We want them to be painted anyway, so we've done as much prep as we think is needed. The varnished, or what was the wood grain effect or varnished side, is the landing, is the outside of the rooms. So I've put a little bit more prep into those, but really everything's ready now. We'll spray everything white, and then we'll be able to then tell exactly where we need to fill. So what have we learned? Well, the heat gun was definitely needed, and I'll leave a link to that one down below. It was just far quicker with the thick, where we had a paint build up of maybe 6 or 7 different coats. We could really get through that much quicker and then move on to sanding. You can see here there's little bits of paint which are just so thin that it's not going to be an issue. I didn't really want to take everything back to bare wood, there's no need to do that. But, so stripping first. I haven't bothered stripping in the details here because we could just be here week after week if we really wanted to take everything back. You do gain a bit more detail if you take out all of the finish, but there's enough there that it's going to still look like a nice traditional door. If we took everything right back, it can almost look a little bit too sharp looking. That's what I'm telling myself. Maybe it's me being lazy. But there we go, 5 doors ready to spray. We're going to have a good clean down now, get them stood, get them ready, and then hit them with a sprayer. So we're going to get on with that. It shouldn't be too long before that video will be out, and we can move on to then looking at all the hardware and everything else that's involved and rehanging the doors. Little reminder, mugs are still back on sale in the web shop on the website, so I'm going to leave a link to that down below. We've been sending them out every few days, so if you want to grab one of those, head over there. It's a great way to support the channel. As always, thank you to all these lovely people on Patreon who are supporting us on a regular basis. But apart from that, thank you for watching. Remember, if you can, do it yourself, and we'll see you next time.